Good afternoon, Math 7 Masters. Yet again, I'm back here with another video on, we're going to talk a little bit about circles like we have been. So in the last video, we talked a little bit about pi and circumference and diameter and radius and all those great things. In this video, we're going to focus more on the radius. And take a look at how circumference goes hand in hand with radius as well as it does with diameter in the last video. So without further ado, we have another simulation here that I'm going to show you, or animation. In this animation, we're looking at the radius. Okay, so I'm just going to pull this up a little bit, and this is a very cool program that I told you about before. You can just look it up on Google if you want. It's called Geogebra. It's great for geometry and looking at shapes and different applications. So as you can see up here, we have a radius of 5. So that tells us that this is 5. Okay, and the radius is half of the diameter, and the radius goes, it goes from the center of a circle to the end of the circle, or to the outside of the circle. Well, not the outside, but to the end of it. That's what we'll just call it at that. So radius is half of the diameter. So the diameter would be the full length through the center of the circle from one end to the other. So you got the radius, which starts in the center and goes to one end, right? And that's half the diameter, right? So if that's 5, that means our diameter is 10. Okay, so in the last video, we talked about how we wrapped diameters around the circle, right? And how many of those diameters we could wrap around the circle to get all the way around 360 degrees to the other side. Okay, now that goes hand in hand with circumference, right? Circumference is the distance around the outside of a circle, or the distance around a circle. So this time we're going to wrap radius, or radii, around the outside of this circle. So watch carefully as the animation goes through. Here we go. So as you can see, you have 1 radii that's been wrapped. You have 2 radii. There's 3 radii. That's 4 radii wrapped around the circle. That's 5 radii. That's 6 radii. And we have actually 28% left of the radius, which is about, if we look right here, it's no different than 1.42 like it's saying here. That's what's left. But you have, when you divide that by 5, you get 0.28. So 0.28 this is the amount that's left. Okay, so we quite don't have 7 radii, but we have 6.28. That's what we would call it. It would go around 6.28 times if we're counting the radius. So that's interesting. In the last video, we talked about how diameter goes hand in hand with circumference of a circle and how they're related. Well, this time we're looking at the radii, and you're going to find that they're related as well. But as you notice too, hopefully you're starting to realize that there's 2 different formulas you can use for circumference, but it all depends on whether you're focusing on the diameter or the radius. Now in here, do you think you can write a formula for the circumference of a circle, but only thinking about the radius? So think about the radius and how many radii it took to wrap around this circle, right? And question 2, I want you to think about this. If pi equals the number of diameters one can wrap perfectly once around a circle, how many radii can be wrapped around this same circle? Okay, so you got to think about it. How is the diameter and the radius similar? We talked a little bit about this. So I'm starting to get that brain moving and thinking, right? So think about it. Now this is a very visual application. So you got to use what you have, so think of it in terms of that. It's not just what we talked about in the last video where pi is pi and we just use pi because it's the number that's given to us. There's a reason why pi is used. And we talked about that in the last video, and I'm mentioning it again in this video. And obviously, do you think you could write another formula for circumference, right? Do you think you could write another formula for circumference as it relates to the radius, right? So think about it. And I know Mrs. Franks and Mrs. Kinney have talked about this, but this is just another cool video to show you what it looks like visually, what circumference looks like visually, what radius looks like visually, and what diameter looks like visually. So I hope you enjoy this. If you have any questions on either the last video that deals with the diameter or this video that deals with a radius with circles, please feel free. Go ahead and post something on Google Classroom if you're in Mrs. Frank's or Mrs. Kinney's class, or feel free to email me or Mrs. Kinney or Mrs. Frank's as well. But I just wanted you guys to see it. I thought it was pretty cool for a Tuesday. So my Math 7 Masters, Mr. Frechette is out.